The rain hammered against the windows of the suburban home like bullets against armor plating. Inside, Sarah Chen moved through her kitchen with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned that every second could mean the difference between life and death. She was preparing lunch for her twin 8-year-old daughters, Maya and Sophie, who were upstairs doing homework. To anyone watching from the outside, she looked like any other suburban mother. Shoulder-length black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater, moving between the refrigerator and counter with the choreographed dance of domestic routine. But appearances, as Sarah had learned over 15 years of classified operations, could be the most dangerous deception of all. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The doorbell's sharp chime cut through the steady drumbeat of rain. Sarah's hand instinctively moved toward the knife block before she caught herself. Old habits. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and walked to the front door, glancing through the peephole. 2 men in dark suits stood on her porch, their faces grim and official. Rain dripped from the brims of their hats like tears from a funeral shroud. Sarah opened the door with the cautious smile she had perfected during countless cover operations. "Can I help you?" The taller man, whose sharp features and cold gray eyes reminded her of the interrogator she had once been trained to resist, flashed a badge. "FBI. I'm Special Agent Morrison. This is Agent Rodriguez. We need to speak with you about your husband." Sarah's expression didn't change, but internally, every alarm system she possessed began screaming. Her husband, Captain Marcus Chen, was currently deployed on a classified mission that she couldn't discuss even if someone put a gun to her head. "My husband is overseas on military duty. What exactly do you need to know?" Agent Morrison stepped closer, using his height, easily 6'3", to loom over Sarah's 5'6" frame. It was a classic intimidation tactic, one she had seen used countless times in hostile territories. "Mrs. Chen, your husband has been accused of selling classified information to foreign agents. We have evidence that suggests he's been compromising national security for the past 18 months. The words hit Sarah like shrapnel, but she kept her face neutral. Marcus was many things: stubborn, overly protective, someone who left his socks on the bedroom floor despite 15 years of marriage, but he was not a traitor. She had served alongside him on 3 different classified operations before they had decided to start a family. She knew his character the way a sniper knows the weight of her rifle. "That's impossible," Sarah said quietly. "My husband is one of the most patriotic men I've ever known." Morrison's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Mrs. Chen, I understand this must be difficult for you, but we need to search your home for evidence. We have a warrant." He produced a folded document from his coat pocket. "Now, I know this is probably overwhelming for someone like you. You're just a housewife, after all. You probably don't understand the complexities of national security." Agent Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably beside his partner. Something in Morrison's tone seemed to make him uneasy, though he remained silent. Sarah took the warrant and scanned it quickly. Her training had taught her to read legal documents under pressure, and this one looked legitimate, though something about the timing felt wrong. Marcus had been deployed for only 3 weeks. If they suspected him for selling secrets for 18 months, why wait until now? "I understand you have a job to do," Sarah said, stepping aside to let them in. "Please try to keep the noise down. My daughters are upstairs doing homework, and I'd prefer not to traumatize them." Morrison brushed past her, his shoulder deliberately bumping hers as he entered. "Don't worry, Mrs. Chen, this will all be over soon. Why don't you just stay in the kitchen and let us handle this? Make some coffee or something. Do whatever it is you housewives do." The condescension in his voice was thick as motor oil, and Sarah felt something cold and dangerous settle in her chest. She had been called many things over the years: Lieutenant Chen, Operator 7, Ghost, sometimes less flattering names from enemies who had underestimated her lethality, but just a housewife was a new one. She watched as Morrison and Rodriguez began their search, noting how Morrison seemed to know exactly where to look. He went straight for Marcus's home office, ignoring the obvious places where someone might hide documents in favor of more sophisticated locations.
He checked behind picture frames, inside book spines, even running his fingers along the underside of desk drawers. This wasn't the broad sweep of agents looking for evidence. This was the targeted search of someone who knew what they were looking for and where to find it. Sarah retreated to her kitchen, pulling out her phone as she pretended to start the coffee maker. She opened what appeared to be a family photo app, but her thumb traced a specific pattern across the screen, a sequence she hadn't used in 8 years. The app transformed, revealing a secure communication interface that very few people in the world had access to. Her fingers moved quickly across the virtual keyboard. Package compromised. Request immediate verification on Bravo 7 status. The response came back in less than 30 seconds. Bravo 7 secure and operational. No current investigations. Who is asking? Sarah's blood ran cold. If Marcus wasn't under investigation, then what were these men really doing in her house?
Sarah typed back quickly. This is Whisper 6 requesting immediate background check on FBI Special Agent Morrison and Agent Rodriguez. Possible hostile infiltration of civilian residents. While she waited for a response, Sarah moved with deliberate casualness around her kitchen, but her eyes never left the two men. Morrison was now in her living room, examining family photos with an intensity that had nothing to do with a standard investigation. He lingered on a particular picture, one of Sarah and Marcus at their wedding, both in full military dress uniform. Agent Rodriguez appeared in the kitchen doorway. Unlike his partner, his approach seemed genuinely apologetic. Mrs. Chen, I'm sorry about Agent Morrison. He's had a difficult week, and sometimes stress affects people's manners. Sarah poured coffee into 2 mugs, studying Rodriguez's face. He was younger than Morrison, probably mid-30s, with kind brown eyes that reminded her of her first commanding officer, someone who had genuinely cared about the welfare of his team. It's all right, Agent Rodriguez. Can I ask you something? Of course. How long have you and Agent Morrison been partners? Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. Actually, this is only our second case together. I was reassigned to his team last month after my previous partner retired. Interesting. Sarah handed him a mug of coffee. What made you want to become an FBI agent? My father was career military, Army Rangers. He always said the best way to serve your country was to protect the people who couldn't protect themselves. Rodriguez sipped his coffee and Sarah noticed his hands were steady. Whatever Morrison was involved in, Rodriguez might be an unwitting participant rather than a co-conspirator. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message. She glanced down at the screen, and what she saw made her stomach drop into free fall. Agent Morrison, real name Michael Morrison, former CIA operative, discharged for unauthorized contact with foreign intelligence services. Current whereabouts unknown. Agent Rodriguez, legitimate FBI, no flags. Recommend immediate extraction. Sarah's mind raced. A rogue CIA agent with a fake FBI badge in her house looking for something specific. This wasn't about Marcus at all. This was about her. She excused herself to check on her daughters, but really she needed to think. As she climbed the stairs, she could hear Morrison's voice becoming more agitated. There has to be something here. The intelligence was specific. Sarah slipped into Maya and Sophie's shared bedroom. Both girls were at their desks, focused on math homework, completely unaware that their world was about to change. Sarah had always hoped this moment would never come. The moment when her past life collided with the peaceful existence she had built for her family. Sarah said softly, "Girls, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do you remember the special game we practiced? The one where you hide in the secret place?" Maya, the older twin by 4 minutes and infinitely more serious, looked up immediately. "Is it the bad men game, Mommy?" Sarah's heart broke a little. Even at 8 years old, her daughters had absorbed enough of their parents' cautious nature to understand that sometimes bad people might come looking for them. "Yes, sweetheart. I need you and Sophie to go to the secret place right now, and don't come out until Daddy or I come to get you, okay?" Sophie, always the more spirited of the twins, frowned. "But what about our homework?" "Homework can wait. This is more important." Sarah helped them gather a few essential items, their favorite stuffed animals, a flashlight, and some water bottles she kept in their room for emergencies. The secret place was a hidden compartment she and Marcus had built behind the false wall in their closet, large enough for both girls and stocked with emergency supplies. As her daughters settled into their hiding place, Sarah kissed each of their foreheads. "Remember, no matter what you hear, don't come out until we come for you, and if strangers try to find you, you stay quiet as mice.
"We love you, Mommy," Maya whispered. "I love you too, both of you, more than all the stars in the sky." Sarah sealed the compartment and rearranged the clothing to hide the entrance. Then she stood in her daughter's room, letting herself transform. The suburban mother was still there, but underneath, rising like a phoenix from carefully buried ashes, was Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Naval Special Operations Operator, veteran of classified missions across 3 continents. She had retired from active duty 8 years ago, after a mission in Eastern Europe had gone sideways and left her with scars both visible and hidden. She had wanted a normal life for her children, a chance to raise them without the constant specter of violence and danger that had defined her 20s and early 30s. But normal, it seemed, was a luxury that people like her were never truly allowed to have. Sarah opened her bedroom closet and moved aside a stack of sweaters, revealing a small electronic panel. She pressed her thumb to the scanner, and a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a space that definitely didn't exist on the house's original blueprints. Inside were items she hadn't touched in years: tactical gear, communications equipment, and weapons that were definitely not legal for civilian ownership. At the very back, wrapped in protective cloth, was her old service weapon, a modified M4A1 that had saved her life more times than she cared to count. She had hoped never to touch these things again, but as she heard Morrison's voice growing more agitated downstairs, she realized that some parts of your past never truly let you go. They just wait in the shadows, patient as predators, until the moment you needed them most.
Sarah quickly changed into dark tactical clothing she had kept hidden behind her winter coats. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the suburban mother in jeans and a sweater, replaced by someone who moved with the deadly grace of a trained killer. She strapped on a tactical vest, checked her sidearm, and clipped a throat mic to her collar before activating a frequency she hadn't used in years. "Control, this is Whisper 6. I have a code black situation at my location, requesting immediate backup." The response was immediate. "Whisper 6, this is Control. We thought you were out of the game." "So did I. I have a rogue CIA operative in my house with fake federal credentials, searching for unknown materials. Civilian family members secured. Request SEAL Team 7 immediate deployment to my coordinates." "Stand by, Whisper 6. SEAL Team 7 is currently training 20 minutes from your location. ETA 15 minutes. Copy that, Control. Be advised, I have one legitimate FBI agent on scene who appears to be an unwitting participant. Agent Rodriguez, mid-30s, Latino male. Do not engage him as hostile unless situation changes." "Understood. Whisper 6, your extraction authorization is still active if you need it." Sarah almost smiled. Even after 8 years, the Navy was still looking out for her. "Negative on extraction, Control. I'm done running." She moved to her bedroom window and carefully observed the street below. Morrison had come in a standard black SUV, but Sarah's trained eye caught details that most people would miss. The vehicle was parked at an angle that provided quick exit routes in 2 directions. The tinted windows were likely bulletproof. And most tellingly, there was a second vehicle, a gray sedan parked 3 houses down with someone in the driver's seat. This wasn't a simple investigation. This was an operation. Sarah made her way downstairs, moving with the silent precision she had learned in countless hostile environments. She could hear Morrison and Rodriguez in Marcus's office, Morrison's voice growing increasingly frustrated. "There has to be something here," Morrison said. The intel was specific. Sarah Chen, former lieutenant, Naval Special Warfare. She had access to classified materials that never made it back to the Navy after her last mission. Rodriguez's voice was puzzled. "Sir, with respect, if she's former military, why didn't we coordinate with naval intelligence? This seems like something that would fall under their jurisdiction." "Because, Agent Rodriguez, naval intelligence doesn't know about this particular situation. Some things are better handled quietly." Sarah's jaw tightened. So that was it. Morrison was after something from her last mission, Operation Red Dawn, a classified extraction in Syria that had gone terribly wrong. She had never spoken about what happened during those 72 hours, not even to Marcus. The official reports were sealed, and most of the team members were dead. But Sarah had kept something from that mission, something that certain people would kill to get their hands on. She activated her throat mic. "Control, this is Whisper 6. I need you to run a deep background check on Operation Red Dawn, specifically any intelligence that might have been compromised. I think someone's been digging into classified files." "Copy that, Whisper 6. We'll run it through channels."
Sarah positioned herself at the bottom of the stairs, where she could see both the front door and the entrance to Marcus's office. Her service weapon was in her hands, safety off, ready for whatever came next. "Agent Rodriguez," she called out, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to command. "I need you to step out of the office with your hands visible." Both men emerged from the office, but their reactions were vastly different. Rodriguez looked confused, but complied immediately, his hands raised slightly. Morrison, however, came out with his weapon drawn, his false mask of federal authority finally slipping away. "Well, well," Morrison said, his voice carrying a hint of an accent that hadn't been there before. "The suburban wife knows how to handle a gun. How unexpected." "Not as unexpected as a discharged CIA operative impersonating a federal agent," Sarah replied coolly. "Agent Rodriguez, I need you to very slowly reach for your phone and call your field office. Tell them you have an impersonator on scene." Rodriguez looked between Sarah and Morrison, confusion clear on his face. "Ma'am, I don't understand what's happening here." "What's happening," Morrison said, swinging his weapon toward Rodriguez, "is that Agent Rodriguez is about to become collateral damage." But Morrison had made a critical error. He had assumed that Sarah Chen, the suburban mother, would hesitate to use violence in front of a civilian. He had forgotten that Sarah Chen, the Navy SEAL, had been trained to eliminate threats with extreme prejudice. The shot was clean and precise, center mass, exactly as she had been trained. Morrison dropped his weapon and fell to his knees, clutching his chest. Non-fatal, but incapacitating. "Control," Sarah said into her throat mic, as Rodriguez stared at her in shock. "I have one hostile down and secured. SEAL Team 7 still needed for cleanup and secondary threat elimination." Outside, the sound of vehicles approaching at high speed filled the air. Sarah's backup was arriving. But the gray Siganon down the street was pulling away fast, which meant Morrison wasn't working alone. The real fight was just beginning.
The thunder of helicopter rotors filled the suburban air as 3 black helicopters descended toward Sarah's neighborhood like mechanical angels of war. Agent Rodriguez pressed himself against the wall, his training warring with his confusion, as he watched this suburban mother coordinate a military operation with the casual efficiency of someone who had done it 100 times before. "Control, this is Whisper 6, Sarah spoke into her throat mic while keeping her weapon trained on the wounded Morrison. "I need a full tactical sweep of the neighborhood. Secondary hostile vehicle departed south on Maple Street. Gray sedan. License partial, Echo 79. Unknown number of additional hostiles." "Copy, Whisper 6. SEAL Team 7 is establishing a perimeter. We have eyes on the sedan, 3 occupants, heading toward Interstate 95. Rodriguez finally found his voice. "Ma'am, I need to understand what's happening here. My partner." "Your partner is an FBI," Sarah said, without taking her eyes off Morrison, who was growing pale but still conscious. "His real name is Michael Morrison, former CIA, discharged for treason. You've been used, Agent Rodriguez." The front door burst open as 4 operators in full tactical gear swept into the house. These weren't ordinary soldiers. Sarah could tell by their movement, their gear, their silent communication. These were Tier 1 operators, the kind of men she had served alongside in the blackest of black operations. The team leader, a tall man with graying temples and scars that spoke of decades in hostile territories, approached Sarah with a respectful nod. "Lieutenant Chen, it's been too long." "Commander Harrison, I go by Sarah now." "Not today, you don't." Harrison's voice carried the weight of authority that came from leading men into impossible situations and bringing most of them home. "Today, you're exactly who you've always been. We've got a situation developing that's bigger than just this house call." Sarah gestured toward Morrison, who was now cuffed and receiving medical attention from one of the SEALs. "What did you find on Operation Red Dawn?" Harrison's expression darkened. "Someone's been digging through classified files going back 8 years. They know about Damascus. They know about what you recovered from the safe house." The blood drained from Sarah's face. Damascus had been her last official mission, and it had ended with her team scattered, most dead, and Sarah carrying intelligence that 3 different nations would kill to possess.
She had never reported what she found in that Syrian safe house, a hard drive containing the real identities and locations of deep cover assets across the Middle East. Instead, she had buried it so deep that she sometimes wondered if she had imagined the whole thing. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Agent Rodriguez, Sarah said, turning to the still confused FBI agent, I need you to call your field office and tell them you need an immediate extraction. Tell them you've stumbled into a classified military operation, and you need to be debriefed by someone with a very high security clearance. Rodriguez nodded, pulling out his phone with hands that were admirably steady considering the circumstances. While he made his call, Sarah moved closer to Harrison. How bad is it, Commander? Bad enough that the Secretary of Defense authorized me to pull you back into active duty if necessary. The hard drive you recovered in Damascus. We always wondered what happened to it. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. She had hoped that particular secret would die with her. It's not here if that's what they're looking for. We figured as much, but Sarah, the information on that drive, if it falls into the wrong hands... I know. Sarah's voice was quiet but firm. 17 assets across 4 countries. Most of them have families, children. The sound of vehicles approaching interrupted their conversation. Through the living room window, Sarah could see more black SUVs arriving, but these weren't military. The badges and insignia were CIA. Looks like the cavalry has arrived, Harrison muttered. Sarah, I need to ask, do you trust anyone in the agency right now? Sarah watched as men in dark suits began emerging from the vehicles. Her operational instincts, honed by years of survival in hostile territories, were screaming warnings. Not particularly. Morrison was CIA before he went rogue. Who's to say there aren't others? One of Harrison's operators approached. Commander, we've got movement. The CIA team is setting up a perimeter, but they're not coordinating with us. In fact, they've specifically requested that we stand down. Harrison and Sarah exchanged a look that spoke volumes. In the world of classified operations, when agencies start working against each other instead of together, it usually meant that someone had been compromised at a very high level. Sarah, Harrison said quietly, I think you're about to have a choice to make. You can remain Sarah Chen, suburban mother, and let the agency handle this, or you can become Lieutenant Chen and help us figure out who's been selling out American assets. Sarah looked toward the stairs, thinking of Maya and Sophie hidden in their secret compartment. She had built this life to protect them from this kind of situation, but now it seemed that the only way to truly protect them was to become the person she had once been. How many operators do you have with you? Full team, 12 men, all veterans of operations you'd recognize. Sarah made her decision. Then we're going to send a message. These people want to play games with my family. They're about to learn why the Navy spent 15 years training me to be the thing that monsters check under their beds for. Outside, the CIA team was approaching the house. Sarah could see their formation through the window. Professional, but not as tight as it should be. They were confident, perhaps overconfident. That was about to become a very expensive mistake.
The lead CIA agent knocked on Sarah's front door with the kind of authority that assumed compliance. Sarah opened it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, noting immediately that this man's equipment was high-end, too high-end for a standard agency operation. Mrs. Chen, I'm Deputy Director Patterson with the CIA. We're here to take custody of the suspect and conduct a more thorough investigation. Patterson was in his 50s with silver hair and the kind of expensive suit that suggested he spent more time in Washington boardrooms than in the field. But Sarah noticed his hands, scarred and calloused in ways that spoke of operational experience. This wasn't a desk jockey pretending to be a field agent. Of course, Sarah said, stepping aside. Though I should mention, we're in the middle of a coordinated operation with SEAL Team 7. I'm sure you'll want to coordinate your efforts with Commander Harrison. Patterson's eyes sharpened at the mention of Harrison's name. SEAL Team 7 isn't supposed to be operating on domestic soil without specific authorization. They have authorization, Sarah replied smoothly, signed by someone with enough stars on their uniform to make your boss's boss nervous. Behind Patterson, Sarah counted 8 more agents, all wearing tactical gear that was suspiciously uniform. In her experience, CIA field teams usually showed more variety in their equipment choices. Personal
personal preferences developed over years of operations. This group looked like they had all been equipped from the same supply depot. Harrison appeared in the doorway behind Sarah, and the tension in the room immediately ratcheted up several notches. "Mr. Patterson, interesting to see you here. Last I heard, you were running a desk in Langley." "Commander Harrison, last I heard, you were conducting training exercises in Virginia." Sarah felt like she was watching two alpha wolves circling each other, each trying to determine if the other was friend or foe, but there was something in Patterson's tone that set off every alarm bell Sarah possessed. "Agent Rodriguez," Sarah called over her shoulder, "were you able to reach your field office?" Rodriguez appeared, looking even more confused than before. "Ma'am, that's the strange thing. My field office says they never sent me on this assignment. According to them, I was supposed to be in court today testifying in the Henderson case." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon as she processed the implications. If Rodriguez wasn't supposed to be here, then someone had specifically arranged for him to be Morrison's partner for this operation. "Well," Patterson said with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth, "it seems we have a communications breakdown somewhere. These things happen in interagency operations." But Sarah was no longer listening to Patterson's words. She was watching his team's positioning. They had spread out in a formation that wasn't defensive. It was preparatory for an assault. These men weren't here to investigate. They were here to clean up loose ends. And in their minds, she was a loose end. Sarah activated her throat mic with a subtle gesture. "Control, this is Whisper 6. I have a code red situation developing. Multiple hostiles in federal identification. Request immediate escalation to decon protocols." "Copy, Whisper 6, escalating to highest levels. Be advised, satellite imagery shows additional vehicles approaching your location from multiple directions." Harrison must have received the same information through his own channels because I saw his posture shift almost imperceptibly. To anyone not trained in military operations, he would still look relaxed, but Sarah could read the signs. He was preparing for combat. "Mr. Patterson," Sarah said conversationally, "I'm curious about something. How did you know to come here? Morrison's operation is supposed to be off the books." "Mrs. Chen, you're asking questions that are above your security clearance." "Actually," a new voice said from the doorway, "I think Mrs. Chen's security clearance might surprise you." Sarah turned to see a woman in navy dress uniform entering her house. The woman was tall, with short gray hair, and the kind of bearing that came from decades of command. The insignia on her uniform made Sarah's breath catch. Admiral Rebecca Stone, Director of Naval Intelligence. "Admiral," Sarah said, coming to attention automatically. "At ease, Lieutenant." Admiral Stone's voice carried the kind of authority that made grown men reconsider their life choices. She looked around the room, taking in the tactical team, the CIA agents, and the general state of barely controlled chaos. "Mr. Patterson, I think you and I need to have a conversation about jurisdiction." Patterson's confidence wavered for the first time. "Admiral Stone, with all due respect, this is a CIA matter." "No, Mr. Patterson, this is a matter of national security involving one of my former officers and intelligence that belongs to the United States Navy, which means it's my matter now." Sarah felt a surge of relief, but it was tempered by the realization that the Director of Naval Intelligence didn't show up for routine operations. "Sarah," Admiral Stone said quietly, "I need to know. Do you still have it?" Sarah didn't need to ask what it was. There was only one thing that would bring Admiral Stone to her suburban home. "Yes, ma'am, but not here." "Good, because we have a problem. 3 of the assets on that list have gone dark in the past 48 hours. Someone is cleaning house, and they're using the information from that hard drive to do it." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. 17 assets, men and women who had risked everything to help American forces, people with families, with children, with lives that depended on their identities remaining secret, and someone was hunting them down, one by one.
Admiral Stone's arrival had shifted the entire dynamic in Sarah's living room. Patterson's CIA team was still positioned aggressively, but they were now facing not just SEAL Team 7, but one of the most powerful people in the United States military intelligence community.
Mr. Patterson, Admiral Stone continued, her voice carrying the kind of diplomatic steel that came from decades of high-stakes negotiations. I'm going to give you one opportunity to explain why a CIA operation is targeting one of my former officers without naval intelligence being notified. Patterson straightened his tie, a gesture that Sarah recognized as someone buying time to think. Admiral, this operation is classified under Presidential Finding 347 Delta. I'm not at liberty to discuss details. Presidential Finding 347 Delta was revoked 6 months ago, Admiral Stone replied without missing a beat. I should know. I was in the room when the president signed the revocation order, so I'll ask again. What are you really doing here? Sarah watched Patterson's face cycle through several emotions: surprise, anger, and finally, resignation. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its official polish and revealed something much more dangerous underneath. Admiral, you're interfering with an operation that's bigger than your pay grade. Commander Harrison's hand moved to his sidearm. Around the room, Sarah could see his team making similar subtle preparations. Agent Rodriguez, caught in the middle of something he clearly didn't understand, slowly moved toward what he probably thought was a safe corner, but was actually positioning himself directly in a potential crossfire. Agent Rodriguez, Sarah said calmly, I need you to move toward the kitchen. Now. Rodriguez didn't argue. He was experienced enough to recognize when professionals were about to engage in violence, and smart enough to get out of the way. Admiral Stone, meanwhile, hadn't even blinked at Patterson's threat. Mr. Patterson, in approximately 30 seconds, I'm going to make a phone call. That call will go directly to the Secretary of Defense, who will then call the President. Within 5 minutes, your entire operation will be shut down, your team will be arrested, and you'll spend the rest of your life in a very small cell in a very secure facility. Unless, of course, you'd like to start telling me the truth. Patterson's laugh was bitter. Admiral, you're making assumptions about whose side the Secretary of Defense is on. The words hung in the air like a chemical weapon, toxic and spreading. Sarah felt the room shift around her as the implications became clear. This wasn't just about the hard drive she had recovered in Damascus. This was about a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government. Sarah, Admiral Stone said quietly, where is the hard drive? Secure location, ma'am. Somewhere that would require significant effort to access. How significant? The kind of effort that would require explosives and a complete disregard for federal law. Admiral Stone nodded approvingly. Good. Because I don't think Mr. Patterson and his friends are who they claim to be. As if summoned by her words, one of Harrison's operators appeared at his side and whispered something urgent. Harrison's expression darkened. Admiral, we have a problem. Satellite surveillance shows additional teams converging on this location. Not CIA, not military, private contractors. How many? Sarah asked. At least 40 operators in full tactical gear, ETA approximately 8 minutes. Sarah's mind raced through tactical possibilities. Her house was defensible, but not against 40 professional soldiers. Her daughters were secure in their hiding place, but if the house became a battleground, even the best hiding spot wouldn't protect them. Commander Harrison, Admiral Stone said, I'm authorizing immediate evacuation of all friendly personnel. We'll continue this conversation at a more secure location. Ma'am, I can't leave my daughters. You're not leaving them, Admiral Stone replied. You're bringing them with us. This is now a naval operation and you're all under naval protection. Patterson stepped forward. I'm afraid I can't allow that. You're not going to allow anything, Admiral Stone said, her voice dropping to a temperature that could freeze helium. Sarah, get your children. Commander Harrison, prepare for tactical extraction. But as Sarah moved toward the stairs, Patterson made the mistake that transformed him from an annoyance into a genuine threat. He drew his weapon. The next few seconds unfolded with the choreographed violence of professionals who had trained for exactly this scenario. Harrison and his team moved with lethal precision, their weapons appearing in their hands as if by magic. Patterson's team responded in kind, but they were a half-second behind. And in combat situations, a half-second was the difference between living and dying. "Stand down," Admiral Stone commanded, her voice cutting through the tension like a sword. "All weapons down now." The tableau that resulted was something out of a war movie. Two teams of professional killers pointing weapons at each other in a suburban living room, while a naval admiral tried to prevent a firefight that would leave most of them dead. Sarah didn't wait for the situation to resolve itself. She had daughters to protect, and a hard drive that apparently contained information worth killing for. While everyone else was focused on the standoff, she slipped toward the stairs. But Patterson saw her movement. "Mrs. Chen, if you take another step, this situation will escalate beyond anyone's control." Sarah paused, her hand on the banister. When she looked back at Patterson, he saw something in her eyes that made him take an involuntary step backward. "Mr. Patterson, you just threatened my children. That was a mistake you're going to spend the rest of your very short life regretting."
The words hung in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. Sarah had spoken quietly, but every person in that room, trained killers, intelligence officers, and one very confused FBI agent, recognized the voice of someone who had crossed a line from which there was no return. Admiral Stone, who had seen combat in 3 different wars and negotiated with terrorists, dictators, and politicians, took one look at Sarah's expression and made a command decision. "Everyone stand down, now." Her voice carried absolute authority. "Mr. Patterson, you and your team are going to slowly lower your weapons and step outside. Commander Harrison, escort them out and ensure they don't interfere with our evacuation." But Patterson had made the classic mistake of men who had spent too much time behind desks and not enough time in the field. He thought he was still in control of the situation. "Admiral, I don't think you understand the gravity." Sarah moved. Years of suburban life had not dulled her reflexes one bit. She covered the distance between herself and Patterson in 3 quick steps, her hand closing around his wrist and twisting with the precise application of pressure she had learned from Navy instructors who had been trained by men who killed people for a living. Patterson's weapon clattered to the floor as he dropped to one knee, his face contorting in pain. "You broke my wrist," he gasped. "No," Sarah said conversationally. "I dislocated it. Breaking it would have taken more pressure. But if you ever, and I mean ever, threaten my children again, I will show you the difference." She released him and stepped back, her entire demeanor shifting back to suburban mother, as if the display of violence had been nothing more than adjusting a thermostat. "Commander Harrison, I need 2 minutes to collect my daughters, and then we need to be gone." Harrison nodded, his respect for his former teammate clearly deepened by what he had just witnessed. "Ma'am, my team will secure the perimeter, but those contractors will be here soon." Sarah was already moving toward the stairs. "Then we'd better hurry." She found Maya and Sophie exactly where she had left them, hidden in their secret compartment, quiet as mice. When she opened the concealed panel, both girls looked up at her with wide eyes that held far too much understanding for 8-year-olds. "Mommy, are the bad men gone?" "Not yet, sweetheart, but we're going with some good guys who are going to keep us safe." Sarah helped both girls out of the hiding space. "Remember your go bags?" Both girls nodded and quickly grabbed small backpacks they had been trained to keep ready, another precaution that Sarah had hoped would never be necessary. Inside were clothes, identification documents, emergency money, and a few comfort items. "Are we going to see Daddy?" Sarah's heart broke a little more. "I hope so, baby girl. But first, we're going to go somewhere safe while the good guys take care of the bad guys." As they made their way downstairs, Sarah could hear the sound of helicopters growing louder. Through the living room window, she could see Harrison's team establishing defensive positions around her house, while Patterson's people were being loaded into their vehicles under armed escort. Admiral Stone was standing by the front door, speaking rapidly into a secure phone.
When she saw Sarah and the girls, she ended her call and approached them. Sarah, I need to know exactly where you secured the hard drive. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. Sarah glanced at her daughters, then back at the Admiral. Ma'am, with respect, I think that conversation needs to happen in a more secure environment. Admiral Stone nodded. Agreed. There's a naval intelligence safe house 30 minutes from here. We can... The windows exploded inward as the first gunshots shattered the suburban quiet. Sarah threw herself over her daughters, shielding them with her body as glass rained down around them. Through the broken windows, she could see muzzle flashes from multiple positions in the tree line behind her house. Contact rear, one of Harrison's operators shouted. Multiple shooters, approximately 200 meters. Admiral Stone was already on her radio, coordinating with forces that Sarah couldn't see but hoped were substantial. This is Stone. We need immediate air support at the target location. Authorization Bravo 77 Alpha. Sarah helped her daughters to their feet, checking them quickly for injuries. Beyond some small cuts from glass fragments, they were unharmed, though clearly terrified. Maya, Sophie, remember the earthquake drill. We're going to crawl to the kitchen, just like that. The gunfire intensified as more shooters joined the attack. These weren't random contractors. The coordination and precision of their assault spoke of military training and careful planning. They had turned Sarah's quiet suburban neighborhood into an active war zone. Commander Harrison appeared beside them, his tactical vest marked with fresh bullet impacts that hadn't penetrated the armor. Ma'am, we need to move now. My team can hold them off, but not indefinitely. Where's Agent Rodriguez? Sarah asked, suddenly realizing she hadn't seen the FBI agent since the shooting started. He's secured in one of our vehicles with a communications specialist. He's been trying to contact legitimate federal authorities, but someone's been jamming most radio frequencies. Sarah's analytical mind processed this information while her body moved on pure training. Communications jamming required sophisticated equipment and coordination with the assault teams. This wasn't a hastily planned operation. Someone had been planning this for weeks, possibly months. As they reached the kitchen, Admiral Stone joined them. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. The hard drive from Damascus, exactly what was on it? Sarah met the Admiral's eyes while keeping one hand on each of her daughters' heads, pressing them low to avoid the gunfire that continued to pepper the house. Names, addresses, contact protocols, and operational details for 17 deep cover assets across 4 countries, but also something else. What else? Financial records, bank accounts, payment schedules, operational funding. Someone in our government has been paying those assets' enemies to compromise their identities. Admiral Stone's expression went from concerned to furious. How long have you known this? 8 years. It's why I never reported the hard drive. I didn't know who to trust. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder, but these weren't the Navy helicopters that had brought SEAL Team 7. These sounded different, heavier, more aggressive. Commander Harrison's voice crackled through their communication system. Control, we have incoming aircraft, multiple helicopters approaching from the northwest. Request immediate identification. The response made Sarah's blood run cold. Harrison, those helicopters aren't ours.
The kitchen windows exploded as the incoming helicopters opened fire with mounted machine guns, turning Sarah's suburban home into a combat zone that belonged in Afghanistan, not Virginia. Sarah pulled her daughters under the kitchen island, her body forming a protective shield over them as chunks of drywall and splinters of wood filled the air. "Mommy, I'm scared," Sophie cried, tears streaming down her face. "I know, baby, I know. But remember what Daddy always says? Mommy and Daddy are the strongest people in the world, and we will always protect you." Admiral Stone was on her radio, her voice cutting through the chaos with military precision. "This is Admiral Stone, Director of Naval Intelligence. I'm declaring a national security emergency and requesting immediate air support. We have American citizens under attack by unknown hostile forces on domestic soil." Commander Harrison's voice came through their comm system. "Admiral, we've got at least 60 shooters on the ground now. Professional equipment, military coordination. These aren't mercenaries. This is a full military operation."
Sarah's mind raced through technical options while keeping her daughters calm. Her house was well built, but it wasn't designed to withstand a sustained military assault. The secret compartment upstairs might protect Maya and Sophie temporarily, but if these attackers were willing to level the entire house, nowhere would be safe. "Commander," Sarah called out, "what's our exfiltration plan?" "Working on it, ma'am, but they've got us surrounded and outgunned." That's when Sarah made a decision that would have seemed impossible to anyone who had seen her making school lunches that morning. She activated her old operational protocols, accessing resources she had hoped never to use again. She pulled out her phone and opened what appeared to be a family photo app, but her fingers traced a pattern across the screen that transformed it into something far more sophisticated. The secure interface that appeared would have made NSA analysts weep with envy. "Control, this is Whisper 6. I'm activating Protocol 7. The response was immediate. "Whisper 6. Confirm activation of Protocol 7. Are you certain?" Admiral Stone's head snapped towards Sarah. Protocol 7 was a legend in intelligence circles, a last resort evacuation plan that only a handful of people were authorized to activate. It was designed for situations where standard extraction methods had failed and American lives were in immediate danger. "Confirmed, Control. Protocol 7 active. I have 2 civilian dependents and high-value intelligence requiring immediate extraction. Whisper 6, Protocol 7 assets are inbound. ETA 4 minutes. Be advised, this will be dramatic." Sarah almost smiled, despite the circumstances. Dramatic is one way to describe what was about to happen. She turned to Admiral Stone. "Ma'am, in about 4 minutes, the situation is going to change significantly. I need you to trust me." "Sarah, what exactly is Protocol 7? Before Sarah could answer, one of Harrison's operators appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Ma'am, they're preparing to breach the front door. We can hold them for maybe 2 more minutes." "Roger that," Sarah replied, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to life and death decisions. "Admiral, I need you to make sure Agent Rodriguez is in one of the vehicles. When I give the signal, everyone needs to be ready to move fast." The gunfire outside suddenly intensified, but now it was coming from a different direction. Through the broken kitchen windows, Sarah could see muzzle flashes from positions that hadn't been there moments ago. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message. "Whisper 6. Ghost Team is in position, marking friendly positions now." "What's Ghost Team?" Admiral Stone asked. "People I served with in places that don't officially exist," Sarah replied. "They've been keeping an eye on things since I retired." The sound of the helicopters changed suddenly. The aggressive attacking aircraft were now taking fire from ground positions. Through the chaos, Sarah could hear the distinctive sound of .50 caliber sniper rifles, each shot precisely placed to maximum effect. "Whisper 6. This is Ghost Leader. We have suppressed the hostile air assets and are engaging ground forces. Recommend immediate movement to LZ Alpha." LZ Alpha was Sarah's backyard, which was about to become a very dangerous place to be, but it was also their only way out. "Commander Harrison," Sarah called out, "we're moving to the backyard in 30 seconds. Your team needs to provide cover." "Ma'am, the backyard is completely exposed." "Not for long." As if summoned by her words, the sound of incoming aircraft filled the air again, but these helicopters sounded different. Larger, more powerful. Through the broken kitchen windows, Sarah could see searchlights cutting through the smoke and chaos. Admiral Stone was staring at Sarah with a mixture of amazement and something that might have been pride. "Sarah, who exactly were you before you became his suburban mother?" Sarah looked down at Maya and Sophie, who were clutching their stuffed animals and looking at her with the kind of absolute trust that only children could have. Then she looked back at Admiral Stone. "I was the person they sent when everyone else had failed. I was the ghost that enemies whispered about in the dark. I was the last resort when the last resort wasn't enough." The backyard suddenly lit up as if it was the middle of the day. 4 massive helicopters were descending, their door gunners laying down suppression fire that made the attacking forces take cover. These weren't standard military aircraft. They were modified for operations that most people never heard about. And tonight, Sarah continued, lifting Sophie into her arms while Maya grabbed her hand. "I'm a mother protecting my children, which makes me the most dangerous thing these people have ever encountered."
The extraction was unlike anything Agent Rodriguez had ever seen in his 15 years with the FBI. As Sarah's mysterious ghost team engaged the attackers with precision that bordered on surgical, 4 black helicopters descended into her backyard like mechanical angels of war. These weren't standard military aircraft. They were sleek, heavily armed, and moved with the kind of coordination that spoke of crews who had done this exact thing in hostile territories across the globe. Sarah moved through the chaos carrying Sophie while Maya held tight to her hand, her transformation from suburban mother to military operator now complete. She wore her daughter's trust like armor, and her calm confidence seemed to create a bubble of safety around them even as bullets flew overhead. "Admiral," Sarah called out over the sound of rotor wash and gunfire, "the lead helicopter is yours. Agent Rodriguez goes with you." "What about you?" Admiral Stone had to shout to be heard. "Different bird. Security protocol." Sarah was already moving toward the second helicopter where a crew chief was laying down suppressing fire with a mounted machine gun. "Maya, Sophie, remember when we went to the air show and saw the helicopters? This is going to be just like that, but louder." Commander Harrison and his SEAL team were providing overwatch, their precise fire keeping the attacking forces pinned down while the evacuation proceeded. But Sarah could see that the enemy was regrouping, preparing for one final push to prevent their escape. That's when Ghost Leader's voice came through her earpiece. "Whisper 6, we have a problem. Satellite surveillance shows additional hostile forces approaching from 3 directions. This was a trap." Sarah's blood ran cold. If this had been a trap, then someone had known about Protocol 7. Someone had known that she would call for extraction, and they had prepared accordingly. "Ghost Leader, what's the secondary exfil plan?" "Working on it," Whisper 6, "but we may need to get creative." Creative, in military parlance, usually meant something that would look spectacular and be completely illegal under normal circumstances. Sarah found herself hoping for spectacular. The crew chief of her helicopter was a grizzled veteran whose face looked like a roadmap of every conflict America had been involved in for the past 20 years. He helped Maya and Sophie into the aircraft, his manner gentle despite the violence surrounding them. "Ma'am," he said to Sarah, "we've got a problem. The LZ is about to be overrun and we're carrying civilians. Standard extraction isn't going to work." Sarah strapped her daughters into their seats, making sure their headphones were secure to protect their hearing. Then she moved to the helicopter's tactical station, where screens showed real-time satellite imagery of the surrounding area. What she saw made her stomach drop. The attacking force wasn't just large, it was professionally coordinated. Multiple teams were moving in precise formations, cutting off escape routes and establishing kill zones. This wasn't a hastily assembled group of mercenaries. This was a military operation. "Ghost Leader, can you identify the hostile force?" "Negative," Whisper 6. "No insignia, but equipment and tactics suggest Eastern European Special Forces, maybe Russian Spetsnaz or Ukrainian Alpha Group." Russian Special Forces in Virginia attacking American citizens? The implications were staggering. Either this was an act of war or the conspiracy went even deeper than Sarah had imagined. Admiral Stone's helicopter was lifting off, providing cover fire as it gained altitude. Agent Rodriguez was visible through one of the windows, looking like a man who had stumbled into a movie and couldn't find the exit. Sarah's helicopter was preparing to lift off when the crew chief grabbed her arm. "Ma'am, we've got incoming missiles. Someone's got surface-to-air capability." Through the helicopter's windows, Sarah could see bright streaks of light rising from the tree line, portable SAM missiles, the kind that could turn a helicopter into falling metal in seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," the pilot shouted, pulling the aircraft into a violent climb that pressed everyone against their seats. Sarah watched her daughters' faces, seeing fear but also the kind of trust that broke her heart. Maya and Sophie believed absolutely that their mother would keep them safe. Sarah intended to prove them right, no matter what it cost. The first missiles streaked past their aircraft, close enough that Sarah could feel the heat through the windows. The pilot was good, better than good, but even the best pilot in the world couldn't evade missiles indefinitely in a helicopter loaded with civilians. That's when Ghost Leader's voice came through with words that changed everything. "Whisper 6, this is Ghost Leader. We're going to Protocol Omega." Sarah's eyes widened. Protocol Omega was a theoretical extraction method that had never been tested in real combat. It was designed for situations where traditional extraction was impossible, and the stakes were so high that success was the only acceptable outcome. "Ghost Leader, confirm Protocol Omega. Are you certain?" "Ghost Leader, your daughters are on that aircraft. We're certain." What happened next
next would later be classified at levels so high that most people in the intelligence community would never hear about it. It would be filed under operational methods that didn't officially exist, conducted by people who were never officially there. But for Sarah, watching her daughters hold hands while enemy missiles filled the sky around them, it was simply what needed to happen to keep her family safe. And that made it the most important military operation of her life.
Protocol Omega unfolded like a perfectly choreographed ballet of violence and precision. Ghost Leader's voice came through Sarah's earpiece with coordinates and timing that had been planned for contingencies that most people never imagined could happen. Whisper 6, mark coordinates 38.7892, negative 77.0492. Omega assets are painting targets now. Sarah looked at her tactical display and felt a surge of amazement mixed with terror. The coordinates Ghost Leader had given her were for locations she couldn't see, but apparently assets she didn't know existed were already in position around the battle zone. Maya, Sophie, Sarah said, kneeling beside her daughters in the helicopter, we're going to see some very bright lights and loud noises, but I need you to remember that these are the good guys making the lights. Okay? Both girls nodded, their faces showing the kind of trust that made Sarah's chest tight with emotion. They were handling this crisis better than many trained soldiers would have. The bright lights started as pinpricks in the distance, barely visible through the smoke and chaos. Then they began to grow, revealing themselves as laser designators painting targets with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Ghost Leader to all Omega assets, you are cleared hot. Repeat, you are cleared hot. What happened next redefined Sarah's understanding of American military capability. The hostile forces that had been advancing on their position suddenly found themselves illuminated by targeting lasers from positions they couldn't see, engaged by weapon systems they hadn't known were in the area. The surface-to-air missile sites disappeared in precisely placed explosions that suggested orbital kinetic strikes, weapons that officially didn't exist, but were apparently very real. The enemy helicopters that had been harassing their extraction were suddenly engaged by what looked like fighter jets, though Sarah couldn't see any aircraft on her tactical display. "Mommy," Maya said, watching the light show through the helicopter's windows, "is this what you used to do before you had us?" Sarah smiled, though her heart was breaking a little. "Sometimes, sweetheart, when very bad people tried to hurt good people, we had to stop them." "Are you going to have to do this again?" The question hit Sarah harder than any bullet could have. She looked at her daughters, Maya, serious and protective, already showing signs of the analytical mind that reminded Sarah of herself, Sophie, spirited and brave with Marcus's fearless heart, and realized that her life as a suburban mother might be ending tonight. Admiral Stone's voice came through the comm system. "Sarah, we need to talk about what happens next. The hard drive you recovered, if it contains evidence of American officials selling out our assets, this goes all the way to the top." Sarah activated her private channel. "Admiral, it's worse than that. The financial records show payments going back 15 years. This isn't a recent development. It's been happening since before I was even recruited for special operations." The implications hung in the air like toxic gas. If the conspiracy went back 15 years, it meant that Sarah's entire career, her missions, even the operation where she met Marcus, might have been compromised from the beginning. "Ghost Leader?" Sarah called. "What's the status on the hostile forces?" Whisper 6, hostile ground forces are neutralized or in retreat. Air assets eliminated. But we've got a bigger problem. Satellite surveillance shows federal response teams incoming. Multiple agencies all asking questions we can't answer through normal channels. Sarah understood immediately. Protocol Omega was so far outside normal military operations that explaining it would require revealing capabilities that were supposed to remain classified forever. The rescue that had saved her family had also created a diplomatic and intelligence nightmare. "Admiral," Sarah said, "I think it's time to make that phone call to the Secretary of Defense.
Already done. He's en route to a secure facility where we're going to have a very interesting conversation about exactly what you've been sitting on for 8 years. Sarah's helicopter was now flying over Virginia countryside that looked peaceful in the moonlight, giving no hint of the battle that had just taken place. Her daughters had fallen asleep, exhausted from the stress and adrenaline, curled up against each other with their stuffed animals. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself to imagine a different world, one where she could go back to making school lunches and attending parent-teacher conferences, where her daughters could grow up without knowing that their mother was someone who enemies whispered about in the dark. But that world, if it had ever really existed, was gone now. The hard drive in her possession contained information that could bring down a conspiracy spanning multiple administrations. The attack on her home had shown that powerful people were willing to kill to keep their secrets buried. "Ghost leader," Sarah said quietly, "what's the long-term plan here?" "Whisper 6, that's above my pay grade. But I can tell you this, you're not going back to suburban life anytime soon. There are too many people who want you dead, and after tonight, everyone knows you're not just a housewife." Sarah looked at her sleeping daughters and made a promise to herself. Whatever came next, whatever sacrifices were required, she would ensure that Maya and Sophie had a chance to grow up in a world where their mother's battles had meant something, even if it meant becoming that dangerous woman in the shadows one more time.
The secure facility where their helicopters landed didn't appear on any map. Hidden beneath what looked like an abandoned warehouse in rural Maryland, it was one of dozens of black sites that the American intelligence community used for operations that officially never happened. Sarah carried her sleeping daughters through corridors lined with blast-resistant walls and monitored by security systems that could detect a hostile intention from 100 yards away. Admiral Stone led them to a comfortable room that had been hastily converted into family-friendly accommodations. Bunk beds had been brought in for Maya and Sophie, along with toys and clothes in exactly their sizes, a detail that told Sarah the intelligence community had been watching her family far longer than she had realized. "They'll be safe here," Admiral Stone assured her, as Sarah tucked her daughters into their beds. "This facility has security that makes Fort Knox look like a convenience store." Maya stirred as Sarah kissed her forehead. "Mommy, are we going to live here now?" "Just for a little while, sweetheart, until the grown-ups figure out how to make everything safe again." "Will Daddy come here too?" Sarah's throat tightened. Marcus was still deployed on a classified mission, unaware that his family's suburban life had exploded into an international incident. "I hope so, baby girl. I hope so." Once her daughters were settled, Sarah followed Admiral Stone to a briefing room where the gravity of the situation became clear. The walls were covered with photographs, documents, and connection charts that looked like something from a conspiracy theorist's fevered dream. Except these conspiracies were real. Commander Harrison was there, along with Agent Rodriguez, who still looked like he was questioning every life choice that had led him to this moment, and several other officials whose security clearances were high enough to read classified documents that could start wars. "Sarah," Admiral Stone began, "we need to talk about the hard drive. Everything depends on what's actually on it." Sarah had been dreading this moment for 8 years. The hard drive contained information that could destroy careers, topple governments, and get a lot of good people killed. But it also contained the proof needed to stop a conspiracy that had been selling out American assets for more than a decade. The drive contains detailed financial records showing payments from a network of shell companies to terrorist organizations, foreign intelligence services, and criminal syndicates. The payments correspond exactly with the compromise of 17 deep cover assets over the past 8 years. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. "Are you saying that someone in our government has been deliberately selling out our own people?" "Not just someone," Sarah replied grimly. "Multiple people, across multiple agencies, over multiple administrations. This is bigger than any one person or department." Admiral Stone's expression had grown increasingly grim as Sarah spoke. "How high does it go?"
Sarah met her eyes directly. High enough that tonight's attack was authorized by people with access to classified military assets and the ability to coordinate foreign special forces on American soil. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about corruption or even treason. This was about a shadow network that had been operating within the American government for years, selling out the very people who risked their lives to serve their country. Commander Harrison spoke up. "Ma'am, what's our next move?" Admiral Stone stood and walked to the wall of evidence. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Are you prepared to come back? Full active duty, full operational status. Everything that entails." Sarah thought about Maya and Sophie sleeping peacefully in the next room, trusting that their mother would keep them safe. She thought about Marcus, somewhere in a hostile country, believing that his family was secure in their suburban home. She thought about the 17 assets on that hard drive, some of whom were already dead because someone sold them out for money. "Admiral, 8 years ago, I retired because I wanted my daughters to grow up with a mother who wasn't constantly looking over her shoulder, constantly ready for violence. I wanted them to have a normal life." She paused, looking around the room at faces that represented the best and worst of American intelligence. But tonight proved that there is no normal life for people like us. There's no retirement from this war, no escape from the responsibility we carry. Those 17 assets, they trusted us to keep their secrets. Their families trusted us to keep them safe, and we failed them. Sarah stood, her decision made. "Yes, Admiral, I'm prepared to come back. But this time, it's not just about serving my country. It's about ensuring that my daughters grow up in a world where the people who are supposed to protect them actually do their jobs." Agent Rodriguez raised his hand tentatively. "Ma'am, what about civilians like me who got caught up in this? What happens to people who stumbled into something way above their clearance level?" Admiral Stone smiled for the first time since arriving at Sarah's house. "Agent Rodriguez, you're about to receive a promotion and a security clearance that will make your old job look like a crossing guard duty. We need good people we can trust, and tonight you proved that you're both." The debriefing continued for hours, but for Sarah, the important decisions had already been made. She would hunt down every person involved in the conspiracy that had put her family in danger. She would ensure that the 17 assets on that hard drive, the ones still alive, received the protection they deserved. And she would do whatever was necessary to build a world where her daughters could grow up safe. The suburban mother was gone, probably forever. In her place stood Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Naval Special Operator, back from retirement and ready to remind certain people why they used to whisper about ghosts in the dark. Some mothers protected their children by making sure they ate their vegetables and did their homework. Sarah Chen protected hers by hunting down the monsters that threatened them. And tomorrow she would begin teaching the world the difference between a housewife and a Navy SEAL. The difference, it turned out, was something that Agent Morrison and his conspirators would spend their remaining days regretting they had ever discovered. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.